What's up, Jesus Freaks? Welcome back to another video, and I am so stoked for today's video. We're starting a new little series on the channel. We're going to be going through the book of James. It's Walk Through the Word with John. Welcome. Round of applause, please. Yeah, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I pray that God's Word just instores in your heart and that you allow it to soften your heart and to change the way you walk. Now, the book of James is the half-brother of Jesus. I got my Bible here. I did a whole study last night over chapter 1. I love the book of James, but we're going to be going verse through verse. So why is James important? James's purpose is to confront inactive, superficial faith. Now, that inactive faith, right? You're not doing anything and you're saying you believe in Jesus, right? You're saying you want to love like Jesus, but you're not sharing the gospel. We need to go be doers of the word, and we're going to read a little bit of that in James chapter 1. But I pray that this video encourages you today. I pray that it allows your heart to be softened. But James is the half-brother of Jesus, and who James is writing to scattered Jewish Christians, right? They've been scared of persecution. They're not doing anything about their faith. So James is confronting them about not doing what they should with their faith, right? So we're going to start in verse 1. And James, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all. James, the book of James is so good, and I love it so much. Right? So starting in James 1, verse 1, James, a bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. Now I want to point out that word. It says James, a bondservant, right? As we know, James is a half-brother of Jesus. But see, James doesn't claim Jesus as a brother. He claims, James claims himself as a servant of Jesus. He doesn't say that's family. Right? He says, I'm a servant of Jesus. I am a servant of Jesus. The authority in the kingdom comes from submission, not status. Right? James knew that he had to submit himself to Jesus. James knew that he had to be a servant of Jesus. It didn't matter if he was technically family with him or not. Authority in the kingdom comes from submission, not status. Verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Spiritual maturity is developed through endurance, not comfort. Notice that word when. James doesn't say if trials happen, it says when trials happen. We should consider it great joy when we face trials, when we face tests, right? Because a test comes from God, temptation comes from Satan, right? So we should say, look, God, I know you're testing me right now. I know you're putting trials in my life right now. And that's because you know that I can make it through them. You're trying to give me the perseverance to push through these trials because there's going to be even greater trials in the future. Right? That's what he's saying. Verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven by and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. God answers surrendered faith, not split allegiance, right? When we come to God and we ask for wisdom and we ask for clarity about a situation, we need to come to Him in full boldness that He can give it to us. We can be doubtful in our prayers. When we are doubtful in our prayers, that's a split alliance or a split allegiance. That's a split allegiance, right? Surrendered faith. We need to surrender to God. We need to say, look, I need clarity about this situation, so I'm going to pray to you, Lord, and I'm going to allow your word to speak to me so I can have clarity over this situation, right? We should not be doubting our prayers. God performed so many miracles. If we read in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, it says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Right? So the same Jesus 2,000 years ago that was healing blind men and allowing the paralyzed to walk is the same Jesus performing miracles today, right? We should not be doubtful in our prayers, right? Verse 9 through 11. Let the lowly brother glory in his exaltation, but the rich in his humiliation, because as a flower of the field he will pass away. For no sooner has the sun risen with a burning heat than it withers the grass. Its flower falls, and its beautiful appearance perishes. So the rich man also will fade away in his pursuits. The gospel flips worldly value systems, right? There's this one rich man that walks up to Jesus when Jesus is spending his earthly ministry, right? And this rich man walks up to Jesus. He goes, "Hey, yo, dude, I've kept every single law and commandment. How can I reach the kingdom?" And he said, "Love your neighbor as yourself, and love your God with all mind and soul," right? Well, the rich man looks at Jesus. He goes, "Man, I already do that," right? And Jesus looks at the rich man. He goes, "Since you already do that, sell all your stuff and give it to the poor." And the rich man looks at him and was like, "What?" And just walks away, right? The gospel flips worldly value systems. I don't worry about how I'm going to get the money. Sure, my flesh wants to worry about money, right? But I know God. I know that if I'm broke on earth, let's just keep it real. I'm broke on earth, but man, I'm stacking up riches in heaven, right? Our gift is not on this earth. We cannot take any on this earth with us except people, right? The gospel flips worldly value systems. Verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life when the Lord has promised to those who love him. Faith that lasts is faith that loves God through hardship. I imagine some of you watching this video right now are going through a hardship in your life. Maybe it's a bad breakup. Maybe somebody in your family passed away just totally randomly, right? But if you can have faith that perseveres through that hardship, that faith is going to last. And that faith is going to keep growing, right? If you truly love God, you're going to want to follow Him. If you truly love God, you're going to have faith in Him that He's going to allow you to persevere through the hardships. Verse 13 through 15. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does He Himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. God tests. He does not tempt. God, He does not give death. He gives life. So why would God tempt you with something that's going to bring death? But in reality, when we are tempted, we are drawn away of our own lusts, which is our desires in our flesh. When we're drawn away by our own lusts and we give into that sin and it gives birth to sin, and then when it is fully grown, it brings forth death. God tests us. He does not tempt us. I can't stand when I hear people say, sometimes even in the church house, they say, "Oh, God's tempting me this week. He's real tempting me." God's not tempting you, honey. God's not tempting you, man. Satan's tempting you. You can either follow Jesus and His commandments and be given the gift of a life, or you can follow this sin that's of our own desires. You can follow this sin and it's going to bring forth death. And that's just not physically death. That's spiritually death, right? That's an eternity separate from God. Verse 16 through 18. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of His own He brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind firstfruits of His creatures. Don't blame God for sin. Thank Him for salvation, right? There's so many people. I know I used to do it all the time, right? I would give into the sin and I'd be like, "God, come on, dude. Why'd you put that in front of me? You know that I can't get over that temptation right now." But in reality, it wasn't God tempting me. Instead, there was one point in my life where I was tempted so much that I would always blame it on God and be like, "God, why'd you make me sin? Why did you put that temptation in front of my face when you know that I can't get through it?" And then I had to sit there and I had to think. And then I read James 1:13, and it changed my perspective. And instead of saying, "God, why did you make me sin?" I would say, God, thank you for my salvation and that you love me. Even when I do mess up and I fall into temptation, you still love me unconditionally. Don't blame God for sin. Thank Him for salvation. Verse 19 through 21. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your soul. A teachable spirit is required for transformation. Right, I want to point out verse 19, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Right? There's a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Because He wants us to listen twice as much as we speak. Right? We should listen to God. We should listen to the people around us. We should be slow to speak and slow to wrath. There's going to be times in our life where people are going to anger us and people are going to make us mad. And we have to be slow to wrath. Because in reality, we're bringing forth this light. We're a reflection of Jesus. You could be the only Bible that someone in your family would ever read. You have to be a reflection of that. So if you're getting angry at somebody out on the street for cutting you off, I'm calling myself out here. If you're getting mad at somebody for cutting you off and you're cussing at them and your family member is sitting right next to you and they know you go to church, what reflection is that putting on Jesus? We have to be teachable. We have 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth for a reason. We need to listen more than we speak. We need to be slow to wrath. Verse 22 through 25. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. This is what I meant by the beginning of the video when I said be a doer, not a hearer. Right? We have a lot of people that go to church and want to sit in a pew and just sit there. They don't want to go out and share the gospel. Right? They want to be hearers of the word. But if we read in James 1, it's like a man that looked in the mirror and forgot what kind of man he was. We need to be doers of the word. What does Matthew chapter 28 verse 19 say? Go therefore unto all nations and make disciples. Go. We have to be doers of the word. We have to go evangelize. We have to share the gospel even when it's uncomfortable for us. Because I'd rather be uncomfortable in my sharing the gospel than see someone I love go to hell for all of eternity. And that's just the bottom line of it. You need to be a doer of the word and not just a hearer of the word. Verse 26 and 27 to close us out. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Religion without self-control is empty. Right? And another thing I want to point out before we close is that Christianity isn't just a religion, it's a relationship with the one that created us. Jesus is offering you that relationship today, and you can either accept it or you can deny it. There's no in between. I hope this video found you very well. It's Wednesday, so get into church. Go to church, enjoy it. Go share the gospel with somebody. Maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your dad, maybe it's your little sister or brother. Go share the gospel today. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, never stop being a Jesus freak. See you guys in the next one.